They knocked on the door like it was any other Tuesday. Not like they were there to destroy my life. Not like my parents were standing behind them, already knowing why they came. I didn't even get to finish my coffee. 10 minutes later, I was in handcuffs. My sister didn't speak. My mom told them where my room was. And my dad didn't look me in the eye. The pills weren't mine. The drawer wasn't even one I used. But none of that mattered. Because by then, the lie had already been rehearsed. And I was the only one who didn't know I was in the play. It was a Tuesday, just one of those forgettable gray sky Tuesdays. I was in the kitchen waiting for my coffee to brew when there was a knock on the door. 2 knocks, firm, sharp, not urgent, but final. When I opened it, they were already staring at me. 2 cops, one tall and thin, the other stockier, built like a retired high school coach who didn't believe in small talk. Both in uniform, both expressionless. "Callie Monroe?" the tall one asked. I nodded, throat suddenly dry. "We received a tip about illegal substances at this residence. Would you mind if we came in and had a quick look?" Before I could even process what he said, I felt a presence behind me, my parents. Mom was sipping her morning tea, her cardigan perfectly buttoned. Dad stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes elsewhere. Neither of them looked surprised. "They're just doing their job," Mom said gently. "Callie's room is down the hall, last door on the right." I turned to them. "What is this? Why my room?" No one answered. No one even flinched. I led the way like a sleepwalker. The officer's boots left melting snow on the carpet. Scout, my one-eyed cat, watched them from the windowsill, didn't hiss, didn't move, just stared, like he already knew what was coming. The shorter officer walked straight to my dresser, didn't hesitate, pulled open the bottom drawer. A clear Ziploc bag, white pills inside. It felt like the air cracked open. I laughed, just a tiny, breathless laugh, because what else do you do when reality snaps sideways? "That's not mine," I said, calm, honest, still convinced the truth was enough. The officers didn't respond. They'd heard it before. I turned around fast. My parents were standing in the hallway. Mom had her hands folded like she was praying. Dad still wouldn't look me in the eye. "Tell them," I said louder. "You know that's not mine." The tall officer glanced at them. "You mentioned earlier that you'd seen this bag before?" Mom nodded, soft, almost apologetic. "Yes, it was on her desk. We weren't sure what it was, but she's been distant, withdrawn." Dad chimed in. "She's under a lot of academic pressure. She's not herself lately." I just stood there, my mouth open, the room spinning. Scout jumped off the sill, padding across the room. He rubbed against my leg gently, then backed away when one of the officers stepped forward. They read me my rights. I barely heard them. All I could feel were the cold cuffs snapping around my wrists. My skin didn't feel like mine anymore. I glanced up the stairs. Tessa. She was standing there, oversized hoodie, hair tied up, one hand holding her phone, the other in her pocket. She didn't blink, didn't smile, just watched, like this was all part of a scene she had already rehearsed. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, not because I wasn't breaking, but because it was already too late. They led me out through the front door. The snow was still falling, soft and quiet. Scout watched me leave through the glass, one milky eye, tail flicking once. I thought the worst thing was being overlooked, but it's not. The worst thing is realizing your family is perfectly fine letting you go, as long as it keeps things quiet. The holding cell was cold, not freezing, but the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and stays there. A bench ran along the wall, just wide enough to sit on, not wide enough to lie down. The lights buzzed overhead, fluorescent, too bright, too alive for a room that felt so dead. They didn't tell me anything, not what the charges were, not how long I'd be here, not what came next. They just left me there, alone. I sat still, hands between my knees, wrists red where the cuffs had been. My phone was gone, my shoes too. All I had left were my thoughts. And those, they weren't kind. I replayed the moment over and over again. The drawer, the pills, the silence. But the loudest part was my mother's voice. "She's been distant." Like that meant anything. Like that explained planting drugs in my room and calling the police. Then my father's follow-up. "She's under pressure." As if college stress was a justification for dragging your daughter out in handcuffs. And Tessa, God, Tessa. She didn't say a word, just stood there and watched. Like a director pleased with the scene playing out. No emotion, no hesitation, not even a flicker of guilt. And I didn't fight, I didn't scream, I didn't demand anything. Because deep down, I didn't know if it would make a difference. Because deep down, this wasn't the first time they'd made me feel like I didn't belong. I used to think that if I kept my head down, if I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, did everything right, they'd finally see me. They didn't, they just got better at looking through me. When Tessa smashed the neighbor's mailbox, they blamed me. When she failed out of college, they said she was too sensitive for the system. When I made honor roll, they forgot to come to the ceremony. It wasn't always cruel, just consistent. I was invisible until I made a mistake, and this time, I hadn't even done that. My stomach growled. No one offered food, no one asked if I was okay. I leaned back against the wall, shut my eyes, and thought of Scout. He'd be at home, pacing the window, waiting. He didn't eat when I wasn't there. He didn't sleep unless he was curled up at my feet. And now, I wasn't there, and they were already talking about getting rid of him. I could hear it in Mom's voice, that it's not fair to keep a pet wondering tone, like love could be that disposable. They didn't just want to erase the evidence, they wanted to erase me. I wondered if Grandpa knew, if they had called him, if he'd believed them. He was the only one who ever truly saw me. The only one who let me speak without correcting me. Who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Who said things like, "You're the type of girl who builds her own anchors. That's rare, Callie." I didn't cry in that cell, I didn't fall apart, but I did make a decision. If no one was coming to save me, then I'd save myself. The door creaked open, a guard stepped in. "You've got one phone call," he said. I nodded, stood up, walked barefoot across the cold tile floor. There was only one person I could trust, and she wasn't family. When she picked up, I didn't waste a second. "Hey," I whispered. "There's a red digital clock on my bookshelf. It's not a real clock. There's a camera inside." A pause, then what? "It records everything. I need you to get it, now. Take Scout too." Another pause, then her voice steadied. "Got it. I'm on my way." I hung up and breathed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't frozen. I wasn't cornered. I had a thread, and I wasn't letting go. There wasn't one moment that made me feel forgotten. It wasn't like someone yelled, "You don't matter," and walked out the door. No. It was softer than that, quieter, like a slow leak you don't notice until the floor gives out beneath you. Tessa was born 4 years before me, and from the moment she opened her eyes, she became the center of theirs. She was bright, bold, beautiful in a way that made strangers compliment her in grocery stores. She walked into a room and people leaned in. When Tessa threw a tantrum at the dentist's office, she got a lollipop. When I cried quietly in the car because I forgot my lunch, I got told to be tougher. They didn't mean to play favorites. At least I don't think they did. It just happened, over and over. When she brought home a wobbly clay bowl from her 6th grade art class, they cleared space in the living room to display it. When I spent 3 days painting a landscape for the county fair, it ended up in a drawer behind expired batteries and a roll of tape. When she played piano, they invited neighbors for tea and cookies. When I was cast as Juliet in a school play, they thought it was just rehearsal and forgot to show up. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself they were busy, distracted. But even as a kid, I could feel the difference, not in their punishments, in their attention. So I adapted. I got the grades. I kept my room clean. I didn't talk back. I stayed invisible, hoping maybe, just maybe, being perfect would earn me a place at the table. It didn't. It just made me easier to forget, easier to blame. Then came Scout. Tessa wanted a dog, said it would help her develop empathy, made a whole PowerPoint about it, literal slides. My parents gave in. 3 weeks later, she decided the dog smelled bad. Said he barked too much, ruined the floor, didn't match her vibe. They started calling shelters. That's when I stepped in. "I'll take care of him," I said. I was 11. They rolled their eyes, didn't believe me, but they also didn't want to deal with it anymore. So they said yes, and Scout became mine. Except Scout wasn't a dog, Scout was a cat. He had been a rescue from the start, half-blind, jittery, scarred. He came with a note. Skittish, not good with change. Same, I thought. Scout followed me from room to room. He slept at my feet. He purred when I cried. And in a house where I barely felt seen, he never looked away. Then there was Grandpa. Walter Monroe, retired electrical engineer, lived 5 blocks away in a house that smelled like toast and lemonwood polish. When things got tense at home, which was often, I'd grab Scout's carrier, tell my parents I was going for a walk, and head to Grandpa's. We'd sit on the porch, he'd hand me a grilled cheese, and listen. He never interrupted, never offered advice unless I asked for it. He just made space. Space where I could exist, without explaining, without competing, without shrinking. So when Tessa disappeared for a year, ran off to California, no real plan, came back without warning, I wasn't surprised that everyone welcomed her like nothing had happened. She walked back into the house with her bags and her mood swings and her vague stories. They didn't ask questions. They didn't demand accountability. They just acted like it had all been a bad dream, except for me. I noticed. The long showers, the slurred phone calls, the smell of something chemical under her door. The guys she brought over, one of them winked at me and called me kid. I hated him instantly, but I didn't say anything. Because in our house, saying something made you the problem. Still, I kept feeling her around. Not just in the hallway, but watching. She lingered by my door, paused when I walked by, looked at me a beat too long. I told myself I was being paranoid, told myself I was projecting, told myself it wasn't real. But that's the thing about being invisible. You start second-guessing even your instincts, because for so long no one else ever validated them. Now I was locked in a cell and she was sleeping in my room. And the silence from my parents? It wasn't confusion, it was consent. They knew, they'd always known, but knowing meant confronting. And confronting? That risked the version of the family they worked so hard to protect, so they made a choice. They chose her, again, and again, and again. The next morning, they let me meet with the lawyer, the one my parents had arranged. Her name was Meredith. She wore a fitted blazer and carried a leather folder. Her voice was clipped, professional. She looked like someone who handled paperwork fast and feeling slowly. "Callie," she said, flipping open the folder like this was just another Tuesday for her. "I've reviewed the police report and spoken with your parents." "Of course you did," I thought. "They probably rehearsed the script for you." "They're very concerned," she continued. "They said this is out of character for you, but that you've been withdrawn, quiet, maybe overwhelmed." I stared at her, blink, no response. "I'm not here to judge you," she added. "But we need to be realistic. The officers found something in your dresser. That's hard to ignore." My fingers tightened in my lap. "I didn't put it there," I said. "My sister did." Meredith looked up, paused, just for a second. "You're saying your sister planted it?" "Yes." "And your parents?" "They know. They're backing her up." She shifted in her seat. "Do you have any proof of that?" That word, proof. I opened my mouth, then closed it. And suddenly, I remembered. The clock. The little red digital clock on my bookshelf. Not just a clock. A camera. Cheap, no Wi-Fi, no cloud, just a micro SD card tucked inside, motion-activated, loop recording. I bought it last fall when Scout started having seizures. I wanted to monitor him while I was at school. It wasn't high-tech, but it worked. And if Tessa had gone into my room while I was out, if she had placed that bag in the drawer, it might have caught her. My heart jumped, but I kept my face still, because if Meredith told my parents, that footage might be gone before anyone could get to it. I had to move first. When they handed me a phone for my one call, I dialed without hesitation. Hannah picked up on the second ring. "Hey," I said, "I need a favor, and I need you to not ask why." She didn't respond immediately. I knew she was sitting up right now. "There's a red digital clock on my bookshelf," I said. "It's not a clock, it's a camera. Inside is a memory card." She breathed in. "You want me to get it?" "Yes, now, today, before my parents find it. Take Scout, too." "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft. "No." "Then, but it will be if you hurry." She didn't hesitate after that. "I'm on it." I hung up, and for the first time since the handcuffs closed around my wrists, I exhaled. I didn't know what the camera had recorded. Maybe nothing, maybe just Scout pacing the room. Or maybe Tessa sliding open that drawer, the bag, her hand, her face. If it was there, it could change everything. And if it wasn't, then I'd still find another way. Because I wasn't the same girl who let things happen quietly anymore. They thought I'd disappear, but they forgot one thing. I know how to wait, and I know how to watch. Just like the clock on my shelf. They didn't call it a trial. They called it a pre-trial conference. A chance for all parties to clarify events before anything escalated. I knew what it really was. A reckoning in slow motion. The room was beige. Beige walls, beige table, buzzing lights overhead that sounded like tired bees. It didn't feel like a courtroom. It felt like a waiting room for someone else's punishment. Leah sat beside me. She wasn't the lawyer my parents hired. She was the one my grandfather sent. She didn't wear pearls or pull out a MacBook. She used a notepad. And she carried herself like someone who'd seen the system from both sides. Someone who wasn't impressed by suits or stories. The door opened. My mother walked in first. Pressed blouse, tight jaw, rehearsed composure. My father followed. He looked like a man on autopilot, barely present. Then came Tessa, hands stuffed deep into the sleeves of her hoodie, eyes red-rimmed but not from crying, just worn out. They sat across from us. No one said hello. Leah opened her folder and adjusted the laptop in front of her. "Before we begin," she said calmly, "I'd like to show a brief piece of video evidence." She clicked play. The screen showed my bedroom, empty, still. Then the door opened. Tessa, stepping inside like she belonged there, wearing that same hoodie. She glanced over her shoulder, hesitated, then walked to my dresser. She reached into her sleeve, pulled out a clear Ziploc bag, opened the bottom drawer, slid it in. She didn't touch anything else, didn't look nervous, didn't even blink. She left, just like that. Timestamp 1 day before the arrest. The room went dead quiet. My mom's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She looked at Tessa, then away. My father leaned forward, elbows on knees, like if he stared hard enough, the footage might change, might save him. Tessa just sat there, watching herself on screen, watching the moment she betrayed me. And then she cracked. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she blurted. I thought she'd get a warning, maybe probation, not this. Leah paused the video, folded her hands. Would you like to revise your statements now? My mother spoke first, her voice frayed. We were trying to protect the family, she whispered. You don't understand. No, I cut in. I do, that's the problem. I've always understood. Tessa snapped. You made everything harder. You always acted like a victim, like you were better than us. I didn't think I was better, I said quietly. I just thought I deserved better than this. My dad mumbled something like, this isn't helping, but no one really heard it, not even him. Leah didn't blink. I'll be submitting the footage to the prosecutor today, she said. We'll move to have all charges against Callie dismissed immediately. We'll also be filing a report on the false statements made during investigation. My mom gasped. Tessa looked like she might vomit. My father stared at the floor like it had betrayed him too. And I just sat there, steady, silent. For once, they were the ones falling apart. And I got to watch. No one said goodbye, no one apologized. They just stood and left. First Tessa, then Dad. My mom lingered for half a second, turned to me like she was about to say something, but didn't. Just walked out. They looked at me, I said to Leah, like I was the one who betrayed them. She met my eyes. They know exactly what they did. That's what makes it worse. They thought I'd break. They thought I'd disappear. But I wasn't the one who needed hiding anymore. I was the one with the truth. And now, the truth had a timestamp. 3 weeks later, the gavel came down. Not with drama, not with shouts or gasps. Just a solid wooden thud, like the closing of a heavy book. Tessa took a plea deal. 2 felonies. Possession with intent to distribute. Conspiracy to file a false police report. Sentence, 3 years in state prison, with a minimum of 2 before she's eligible for parole. The courtroom was silent when she stood to accept the deal. Her lawyer did all the talking. Tessa just nodded, eyes glassy, hands shaking. She didn't look at me, not once. My parents were next. Obstruction of justice, false reporting, conspiracy to commit perjury. No plea deals. They insisted it was all a misunderstanding. The judge disagreed. 18 months in county jail, 2 years of supervised probation. No dramatic statements, no breakdowns, just the quiet unraveling of people who built their lives on perception and watched it shatter. They lost more than their time. They lost their friends, their reputations, each other. I heard they stopped speaking a week after the sentencing, that Mom moved out, that Dad drinks more now. It wasn't the truth that broke them, it was turning on each other. That was always their real fear, not justice, not consequences, just exposure. I didn't go to the jail, didn't send a letter, didn't answer the phone when the lawyer called for a reconciliation opportunity. There was nothing to reconcile. They made a choice, and now they had to live with it. I moved in with Grandpa. He greeted me on the porch like he always did, coffee in hand, porch light still flickering even though it was noon. He didn't say, I'm sorry, he didn't say, you were right. He just handed me a folder, thick, yellow. Inside, a trust, already filed, already signed, everything in his name, now mine. You're the only one who ever showed up when there was nothing in it for you, he said simply. I figured that ought to mean something. I didn't know what to say. I think I just nodded. Scout brushed against my ankle like punctuation. At night, the house was quiet, not the tense, hold-your-breath kind of quiet, but the warm kind. The kind where clocks tick gently, where the fridge hums like it's happy to be useful, and where a cat sleeps so still you lean in just to make sure they're breathing. I was breathing. For the first time in what felt like years. Not because I'd won, not because they'd lost, but because I'd survived, because I remembered who I was, and they couldn't take that from me anymore. The lawyer called one last time. Tessa wanted to write me a letter. Closure, she said. I said she could send it. I didn't say I'd read it. People asked if I was angry, if I hated them, if I felt bitter. The truth? No. I didn't feel much of anything, not because it didn't hurt, but because I'd stopped waiting for it to stop hurting. I stopped needing a reason, stopped needing permission. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Silence is, distance is, freedom is. That's what they never understood. They thought survival looked like obedience, like keeping the peace, like playing my part. But survival looks like refusing to disappear, even when you're told it would be easier if you did. The house didn't feel like a safe place at first. Too many memories echoing in the floorboards. Too much silence where voices used to live. But over time, silence stopped meaning danger. It started meaning peace. I repainted the hallway, pulled old wallpaper off the guest bedroom walls, hung fairy lights in the kitchen because I'd always wanted them but never felt allowed. Scout followed me from room to room like he was on a mission. A little slower now, sometimes limping, but always watching, always close. At night, he curled against my ribs like he used to when I was 12, like we'd never left each other. Because we hadn't. Grandpa didn't ask questions, didn't demand updates. He just sat across from me on the porch most evenings. 2 mugs of tea, sometimes grilled cheese, always soft porch light. You think you'll ever see them again? He asked one night. I paused. Maybe, maybe not, but if I do, it won't be because I need something, it'll be because I don't. He nodded like that was the best answer I could have given, and maybe it was. The envelope came 2 months after the sentencing, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. Tessa. I didn't open it, didn't burn it either. I just put it in the drawer with things I wasn't ready to decide about. Because not everything broken has to be dealt with all at once. Sometimes healing means not touching it at all, at least not yet. I started taking classes again, online first, then part-time at the community college. Not pre-law exactly, but something close, justice. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted to understand the system that almost swallowed me whole. Because I wanted to help someone who might not have had a clock camera, or a friend to make that call. I still get quiet sometimes, still flinch when someone knocks too loud, still catch myself looking over my shoulder, expecting someone to rewrite my story without asking. But it doesn't last long, because now when I look forward, there's nothing blocking the view. Scout's gotten older. He sleeps more than he used to. Sometimes I watch his chest rise and fall just to make sure. But he's here, still mine, still choosing me, and I still choose him. I don't know if forgiveness is part of my story. Maybe one day, maybe never. But what I do know is this: forgiveness isn't the finish line. It's okay to walk away, to not reply, to not explain. It's okay to say, that chapter's over, and I'm not going back. If you're listening to this, if your own family has ever made you feel invisible, if you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, or asked to carry a weight that was never yours, know this: you are not the lie they told. You are not what they covered up. You are not disposable. You are still here, still breathing, still allowed to start over. I'm Callie Monroe, and this time, I'm not disappearing, I'm staying, and I'm building something real. On my terms, in my name, with no one else's permission. Not every betrayal ends in rage. Some end in silence, in distance, in choosing yourself, quietly and completely. If your story ever felt like mine, if you've ever been asked to take the fall just to keep the peace, know this: peace built on your silence isn't peace, it's a prison. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away without apology, and heal anyway. Here at Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, we don't just tell stories of justice, we reclaim the ones written to erase us. So if this spoke to you, if you felt even a flicker of yourself in Callie's story, don't forget to follow, share, or just stay a little longer. Because surviving isn't the end, choosing your ending, that's where the power begins.